and welcome to another video about the wonderful world of Latin, where we're asking, who is Vitruvius and what is his De Architectura? The short answer is that Vitruvius was a well-educated Roman architectus who was active during the late 1st century BCE. He wrote De Architectura, or On Architecture, which is the only manual on architecture and engineering to survive in its entirety from Greek and Roman antiquity. As such, it inspired many artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, many architects such as Andrea Palladio, as well as archaeologists. The long answer is much more fascinating. The primary source about Vitruvius and his life is his own writing, and there are a few mentions of the man in the writings of Pliny the Elder and the lesser-known authors Frontinus, Servius, and Sidonius Apollinaris. There has been a great deal of speculation about Vitruvius's date of birth and travels, but many of these details are ultimately uncertain. Vitruvius shares his gratitude to his parents for his education, and he mentions the care of his parents and teachers in both literature and technical matters. Vitruvius hopes that an architectus has knowledge of literature, draftsmanship, mathematics and geometry, history, philosophy, medicine, music and acoustics, laws, astronomy, and astrology. Vitruvius demonstrates at least passing knowledge of many of these fields throughout his manual, and he makes clear his knowledge and praise of the poets Ennius and Achicius, the antiquarian Varro, the orator Cicero, and especially the philosophical epic poet Lucretius. Vitruvius also mentions numerous authors of specialized treatises about architecture, and we will return to these later. Vitruvius himself tells us that he was known to the dictator Julius Caesar, and Vitruvius favored him. After Caesar's assassination, Vitruvius says his loyalties transferred to Augustus. We do not know how quickly Vitruvius came to favor Augustus, but we know that Augustus placed him in charge of ballistae and scorpiones, which are types of catapults and bolt shooters. Indeed, one of the 10 books of De Architectura discusses military machinery. Vitruvius was renewed in this post at the influence of Augustus's sister. Some scholars have speculated that Vitruvius worked under Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa while he was aedile and improved the city's water supply and sewers in 33 BCE. This possibility could explain why Frontinus notes confusion about whether a specific size of pipe, named the quinaria, was introduced by Vitruvius or Agrippa. At some point, Vitruvius designed and oversaw the construction of a basilica at Formiae. Vitruvius provides a detailed description of this basilica, which provided fodder for numerous reconstructions, and these may now have to be judged alongside ruins excavated in 2023, which the excavators are calling his basilica. Sometime thereafter, Vitruvius wrote his treatise De Architectura. References within the book allow us to date it after 27 BCE and maybe to between 22 BCE and 6 CE. Examples and knowledge in the treatise also hint that Vitruvius had special appreciation and knowledge of Italy, Athens, and possibly Ephesus and other parts of Asia Minor. Whether this means Vitruvius traveled throughout these places remains an open question. Our understanding of Vitruvius is enhanced when we learn a little more about the job of architectus in the Roman Empire. This funerary relief from the first 2 centuries CE gives us an idea of the tools used by a Roman architectus. Starting on the left, there is the regula, or ruler, with 16 notches for the 16 digiti that make up a Roman foot, and 3 circles to separate the foot into fourths. Next is the circinus rectus, or calipers, which could be used to draw circles or ensure measurements were the same size as one design buildings or produce guidelines for carving buildings. At the top, there is the damaged carving of a norma, or square, which was used to draw and create right angles. Within the angle of the norma is a perpendiculum, which is a spool of string ending in a weight and was used to ensure a vertical line was accurate and straight. Below the norma and to the left of the perpendiculum is the libella, or level. 2 legs of the level held up a plumb line that can indicate if the horizontal surface is level. To the right of the perpendiculum is a teca, or case holding a stylus, an inkwell, and what seems to be a belt clip. This would enable the architectus to write while away from his desk. On the right are 10 volumina, or scrolls, which might have been used to record building designs. Most of these tools suggest that the architectus was primarily concerned with designing buildings rather than participating greatly in the construction process. The perpendiculum and the labella, though, suggest the architectus may have inspected or had some supervisory role in the construction as it progressed or when it finished. To put it another way, the architectus was more likely to draw a plan or reference diagram, like this drawing of an arch incised on the paving outside the amphitheater in Capua, rather than laying bricks, as shown in this wall painting. Indeed, Vitruvius's treatise describes more about designing buildings and properties of building materials than about how to carry out the building methods. It would also be less likely but possible that the architectus would use the surveyor's groma to measure the ground for laying out a building. Whether or not the architectus laid out the building itself, it is clear that the architectus accounted for the local terrain. For example, the Greek author Polybius describes the ideal layout of a Roman camp, yet this Roman camp in Judea most dramatically accounts for the uneven terrain near Masada. The Roman architectus, therefore, designed structures and machines, and they collaborated with builders and workers who actually made the structures. The social background of Roman architects is also worth noting. In Roman Italy, the first architect to design a marble temple was the Greek Hermodorus, who likely brought the specialized knowledge of marble to Italy around 143 BCE. After him, the role of architectus became more professionalized. Some of these professionals were enslaved or freedmen who obey their masters' or former masters' orders and requests. Other architects were freeborn. This category includes not only professional architects with a Roman liberal arts education, like Vitruvius, who may rely on a family or several families for commissions, but also aristocrats who dabble in architecture, such as the Emperor Hadrian. Some architects may even have been builders themselves before becoming an architect, and many architects seem to have had close connections to builders or groups of builders who may have helped work on their commissions. What then was Vitruvius's De Architectura? It was 10 books, each with a focus on a different part of the trade. Design principles, materials, planning different types of buildings, decorations, acquiring and supplying water, sundials and clocks, and military and hydraulic machines. In these books, Vitruvius describes several architectural principles and then illustrates how they can be used. These principles, ordinatio, dispositio, eurythmia, symmetria, decor, and distributio, emphasize the relationships between individual elements in the whole project. They seek balance, elegance, and harmony, all while adhering to precedent and convention, while using wise and careful choice of materials and locations. Many of these ideals, as Vitruvius shares, arise from nature and the ideal proportions of the human body. Indeed, Vitruvius shares the ideal ratios between different parts of the human body, and this provided inspiration for Leonardo da Vinci's Le proporzioni del corpo umano secondo Vitruvio, or the Vitruvian man. Vitruvius also shares his ideal proportions for many types of buildings, such as temples and theaters. The ratios that Vitruvius shares for the Doric order, though, do not quite line up with existing Doric temples, as seen here compared to the 5th century BCE Doric temple of Hephaestus and the Athenian Agora. The proportions then also represent Vitruvius' preferences in taste, and his tastes tend towards favoring practices from the Hellenistic period. So archaeologists should be wary about applying his guidelines to reconstruct ancient buildings. So why did Vitruvius write his De Architectura? He explicitly provides several reasons, and we can extrapolate another. First, in his dedication of the book to the emperor, he recognizes how much Augustus helped Vitruvius stay out of poverty, and how many great structures Augustus has built, is building, and will build. So he offers an account of architectural precepts that allow Augustus to see how great predecessors and future buildings are. This treatise is to help Augustus appreciate and perhaps even guide his own accomplishments even further. And the first 5 books share architectural principles and focus on public buildings. In this dedication, Vitruvius says the treatise is also thanking Augustus for his benefactions that have allowed Vitruvius to have a comfortable life. Another similar reason depends on an observation Vitruvius made. He noticed that architects used to train their relatives well, not only in architecture, but also to be good, proper, trustworthy men. Now, though, uneducated and inexperienced men are claiming to be architects, so people do not know who to trust with their building projects. It is so bad that some people just oversee the construction themselves. Vitruvius recognizes this problem and offers his treatise as guidelines to help patres familiarum more wisely contract with architects for their private buildings. This reason begins Vitruvius's account of building in private elite houses and interior decoration techniques, just as Vitruvius is helping the emperor deepen his understanding of and appreciation for public buildings. Vitruvius helps wealthy Romans understand things they need to improve their construction contracts and habits. Vitruvius's next explanation for writing De Architectura is based on another observation. There are many more treatises about architecture and its principles written by Greeks than by Romans, even though Romans were also great architects. Indeed, in his preface to Book 7, Vitruvius names many authors whose ideas inspired him. Most were Greek. Some Greeks are conspicuously absent, such as Polyclitus, and some of these authors wrote about individual buildings they designed. On the other hand, 3 authors were Romans. Therefore, Vitruvius is writing his treatise to eliminate the Roman silence on architectural matters, elevate the Roman contribution to architectural theory and literature, and bring greater prestige to Rome and its architects. This project also incorporated Greek ideas about architecture and translated them into a Latin treatise and the Roman intellectual world. Similar projects in other disciplines had been completed in the prior decades. The author of the Rhetorica ad Herennium and Cicero brought Greek ideas about oratory and rhetoric into Latin. Cicero also wrote about Roman oratorical history. Lucretius and Cicero brought Greek philosophical ideas into Latin. In addition to his books on architecture, Marcus Terentius Varro wrote about the history of the Latin language and literature, at times in ways similar to how other Greek scholars studied Homer. Romans were trying to elevate their literature and intellectual contributions to humanity, and Vitruvius did so with architecture and architectural theory. We can also surmise that another goal of Vitruvius was to bring the discipline of architecture into contemporary views of natural philosophy. For example, in his description of travertine and similar stones, Vitruvius explains it is a strong stone for enduring weights and storms, but not fires. The explanation for travertine's susceptibility to fire explains its composition in terms of the 4 elements of the day: little moisture or water, little earth, a lot of air, and a lot of fire. According to Vitruvius, when fire touches the stone, it forces air out, cracking the stone. Then the fire inside tries to fill the vacuum that has been created and expands, making the travertine rather hot. Here, Vitruvius is primarily concerned with describing the stone in terms of Roman natural philosophy. Yes, he tells some of the strengths and weaknesses of the stone, and I'm honestly not sure how reliable this description is for actual travertine, but it takes a bit more imagination to see how the white limestone can be used so often and so well in Roman building, such as in the left of this image showing the Augustan Theater of Marcellus in Rome. Vitruvius also discusses healthy places to build in terms of hot and cold, wet and dry, just as doctors consider these factors. Finally, Vitruvius shares another reason why he wrote the De Architectura. Since he was an honorable architect who did not enthusiastically chase commissions, wealth, and renown, he recognizes his fame is slight. So Vitruvius has written his 10 volumes on architecture to provide him with fame among posterity. Indeed, they have done their job, sharing his ideas about architecture in antiquity and beyond, inspiring artists and archaeologists with his words and ideas about architecture. And now, while he may not hold the most prominent place within the classical canon, you have also gained an appreciation for Vitruvius and his work. Thank you.